Lewis Hamilton's silence has spoken louder than any radio message. In the weeks after Singapore, while the headlines blamed Ferrari's failures, Hamilton was already rebuilding the team from within. What seemed like frustration has turned into leadership, and Maranello can't quite believe what they're seeing. Because for the first time this season, Ferrari's engineers admitted Hamilton isn't just driving their car. He's redefining it. Inside Maranello, the whispers have grown into admiration. What began as a cautious experiment has turned into one of the most profound internal transformations Ferrari has seen in years. For months, engineers had struggled to translate driver feedback into meaningful progress. The SF25's balance issues were well documented, yet no one could find a consistent correlation between data and on-track behavior. That changed when Lewis Hamilton began treating Ferrari's technical division as if it were his own laboratory. He didn't wait for answers, he built the process to find them. He questioned assumptions, redesigned the way debriefs were structured, and even introduced his own comparative metrics drawn from his 12-year archive with Mercedes. Quietly, Ferrari was being taught how to think like a modern team again. Hamilton's approach is unlike anything Maranello has witnessed since the Schumacher-Braun era. Rather than dictating to the engineers, he collaborates with them at eye level. Every suggestion he makes is rooted in measurable data brake pressure overlays, suspension load graphs, heat maps of tire degradation. His feedback doesn't just describe the sensation behind the wheel, it quantifies it. For a team often paralyzed by interpretation and tradition, that clarity is revolutionary. One engineer reportedly described working with Hamilton as operating with a second set of eyes that understand physics. This precision has redefined what Ferrari expects from its drivers, not charisma, not heritage, but mastery of complexity. The effect has rippled across departments. Engineers who once worked in isolation are now integrated into unified task groups, a structure modeled on Mercedes' cross-functional workflow, a model Hamilton himself suggested. It has allowed aerodynamics, mechanical systems, and data analytics to operate as one ecosystem rather than three competing silos. The change might sound procedural, but in Formula One, procedure is performance. The most striking proof came in Ferrari's post-Singapore analysis. Simulations that once took 48 hours to complete were now being reviewed in half the time, and with greater accuracy. The team had found efficiency not through technology, but through trust. Late-night sessions in the simulator have become the heart of this silent rebuild. Hamilton spends hours refining the SF25's digital twin, running dozens of micro-adjustments to understand the relationship between chassis flex and rear-end instability. His inputs are so detailed that engineers have created an internal file named LH Feedback Loop, tracking his suggestions and the corresponding results in real time. That file now sits at the core of Ferrari's development documentation. To put it simply, the driver has become an integral part of the design architecture. It's no longer just about driving, it's about building. Perhaps the most surprising change has come in Hamilton's relationship with the younger engineers. Ferrari's new generation, many of whom joined after the 2022 reshuffle, had grown up idolizing Hamilton from afar. Now they see him not as a superstar, but as a mentor who demands rigor without arrogance. Several have spoken about his habit of walking through the engineering bay after simulator sessions, asking if they've eaten or slept, then sitting beside them to discuss a dataset. It's an understated leadership style, the kind that builds loyalty quietly. And in a team long defined by hierarchy, Hamilton's humility has become its most powerful catalyst for progress. The results are already tangible. Though Ferrari has not yet introduced major updates to the SF25, the car's stability window has improved measurably. Brake temperatures are more predictable, traction under load is steadier, and the transition between low and high-speed corners is smoother. These may sound like incremental gains, but in Formula One, consistency is the foundation of performance. Every tenth of a second recovered in predictability is a step toward reliability, and every reliable lap builds confidence. Inside Ferrari, that confidence has been missing for years until now. As one insider put it, Lewis hasn't just made the car better. He's made us believe we can be better. And that belief might be the most valuable upgrade of all. The silent rebuild of the SF25 is not about chasing immediate victories, but laying the groundwork for sustained competitiveness. What Ferrari is learning under Hamilton's guidance is that progress in Formula One doesn't always begin with a new wing or a lighter chassis. Sometimes it begins with the right mindset. The mindset to learn, to question, and to rebuild. And as the team prepares to face Austin, there's a new kind of energy in the air, one that feels less like hope and more like control. The breakthrough came not in a meeting room, but in the simulator bay, where data never lies. After the collapse in Singapore, Ferrari engineers were still trying to rationalize what had gone wrong. Brake temperatures had spiked, energy recovery had been inconsistent, and neither Hamilton nor Leclerc could push without crossing thermal thresholds. But Hamilton, immersed in the post-race telemetry, noticed a pattern that others had missed. The problem wasn't simply the brakes themselves, it was airflow, or rather, the lack of it. He observed that during medium-speed corners, rear temperatures climbed faster than expected, even when the braking input was mild. That behavior to him didn't reflect poor driving or worn components, it reflected a design flaw hidden in plain sight. Drawing from years of experience with Mercedes engineering culture, Hamilton approached the issue methodically. He requested access to the raw CFD model's data that drivers rarely touch and began overlaying them with live race telemetry. The result was unmistakable. The SF-25's rear brake ducts, designed to complement an aggressive ground effect philosophy, were choking under real circuit conditions. In the tunnel, the concept looked efficient. On the track, it suffocated. The airflow designed to energize the diffuser had instead starved the cooling system, creating a perfect storm of thermal instability. Hamilton presented his findings directly to the technical group, not as a complaint, but as a structured report. "This isn't a setup issue," he said. "It's physics. We're trapping heat faster than we can manage it." That sentence changed the course of Ferrari's preparation for the United States Grand Prix. Within hours, Fred Vasseur ordered a dedicated engineering task force to validate Hamilton's diagnosis. When they did, the numbers aligned perfectly. The airflow deficit was quantifiable, measurable, and most importantly, solvable. Working alongside Brembo's Andrea Algerai, Hamilton helped design an interim modification, a series of internal duct refinements, and reshaped brake shrouds to optimize the air channel without compromising the car's aerodynamic integrity. The changes were minor in appearance, but monumental in consequence. For the first time in months, Ferrari wasn't reacting to problems, it was addressing their root cause. The reaction from the engineers was one of awe more than surprise. Hamilton had not only identified the issue, but also proposed a practical solution that fit within the constraints of FIA regulations and Ferrari's development budget. His fix didn't demand a redesign or an overhaul, it demanded understanding. The team implemented a prototype during simulator testing, and the data was immediate. Peak brake temperatures dropped by nearly 30 degrees Celsius, and recovery balance stabilized through long runs. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress, the kind of progress that builds momentum. In a sport defined by marginal gains, Hamilton had delivered a margin that mattered. Behind the scenes, this discovery carried even greater implications. For years, Ferrari's internal politics had created a wall between aerodynamic priorities and mechanical reliability. Hamilton's intervention effectively tore that wall down. By proving that a mechanical fix could exist without compromising aerodynamic efficiency, he united two departments that had rarely collaborated smoothly. One senior engineer described the shift as an alignment of logic and passion, the first we've seen in years. The team began to work like a single organism again, with Hamilton at its center, the rare driver whose presence didn't disrupt the hierarchy but elevated it. The redesigned brake ducts are set to debut in Austin, a circuit notorious for its punishing braking zones and unpredictable surface grip. It's a perfect testing ground, a place where Ferrari's newfound resilience will either prove its worth or expose the limits of Hamilton's diagnosis. Yet regardless of outcome, what matters most is that Maranello has rediscovered confidence through clarity. They no longer guess, they measure. And that transformation was sparked not by a technical director or a corporate strategy meeting, but by a driver who refused to accept that good enough was good enough. By the time Ferrari's freight reached Texas, the story inside Maranello had already shifted from survival to intent. Hamilton's fingerprints were everywhere, from the setup sheets to the engineering protocols and the nightly simulation logs. He had not only diagnosed Ferrari's weaknesses, he had rewritten the logic of how the team approached performance. Austin's Circuit of the Americas, with its blend of long straights, heavy braking zones, and technical mid-sector corners, became the perfect proving ground for this new methodology. Hamilton knew this track better than almost anyone on the grid. 5 victories there had taught him that COTA isn't won by raw speed, but by rhythm, by how well a car can dance between aggression and control. And that is precisely what he aimed to teach Ferrari. In the past, Ferrari's strategy for COTA had always followed the same blueprint: maximize straight-line speed, minimize drag, and hope that enough efficiency through the first sector would compensate for instability in the final one. It was a philosophy born from aerodynamic pride rather than racing logic. Hamilton changed that in a single meeting. "Forget top speed," he said. "Give me a car that brakes like a Mercedes and rotates like a Red Bull. The lap time will come." It was the kind of instruction that sliced through layers of corporate caution. Ferrari's engineers, initially hesitant to compromise their aerodynamic model, soon realized that Hamilton wasn't asking for miracles, he was asking for balance. And balance in Formula One is the rarest form of performance. The adjustments he proposed for Austin were as elegant as they were radical. The brake-by-wire system was recalibrated to shift bias dynamically under deceleration, giving Hamilton finer control into corners without destabilizing the rear axle. The suspension geometry was subtly revised within legal parameters to provide a more progressive load transfer under braking, improving traction on exit crucial for COTA's long acceleration zones. The changes weren't visible to the naked eye, but they transformed how the SF-25 behaved under stress. Where once the car had felt nervous and unpredictable, it now responded with poise. As one engineer put it, "We stopped fighting the car. We started dancing with it." Hamilton's setup philosophy for Austin went beyond mechanical tweaks. It redefined Ferrari's identity. Historically, the Scuderia has pursued aerodynamic perfection at the expense of adaptability, chasing theoretical numbers rather than real-world stability. Hamilton reversed that logic. He convinced the team to sacrifice a few kilometers per hour of top speed for the sake of consistency in the braking zones. In practical terms, it meant a slower car on the straights, but a faster, more stable machine across 56 laps. The data supported his intuition. Simulations showed that prioritizing braking consistency over outright velocity could save nearly half a second across the race distance due to reduced tire wear and improved race pace. It was the kind of insight that only experience could teach, the blend of human instinct and scientific discipline that defines champions. This shift in thinking also required cultural courage from Ferrari. The team had to accept that their traditional way of building setups, cautious, linear, hierarchical, was no longer enough. Hamilton introduced what he called dynamic compromise, a process of adjusting multiple systems simultaneously to maximize overall efficiency rather than perfecting individual components. It was an approach he'd mastered at Mercedes, where adaptability was the cornerstone of success. To Ferrari's credit, they listened. For the first time, the Italian engineers allowed flexibility in the car's setup flow, modifying brake mapping, suspension travel, and torque delivery in parallel instead of sequentially. The result wasn't just technical progress, it was operational freedom. The effects of this philosophical shift became visible almost immediately. In early simulations for COTA, the SF-25 demonstrated smoother thermal profiles, more consistent lap deltas, and improved handling predictability, all indicators of a car that could finally be trusted over a race distance. Hamilton's feedback from those sessions was telling. "It feels alive," he said, with a hint of satisfaction that had been missing all season. The engineers, some of whom had spent months battling frustration, began to share that sentiment. For once, the numbers aligned with the driver's instincts. Ferrari's data sheets, once filled with contradictions, were suddenly coherent. The chaos had given way to clarity.